We do have recordings of our past sessions available, and I'll be linking those to you after this. Thank you everyone for joining us for the fourth part of our series, Mysteries of Accessibility. Today's presentation will focus on designing Microsoft PowerPoint and Google Slides. My name is Danny Shapiro, and I'm on the marketing team here at Hawks Learning. Our speakers today are Crystal Trapani and Kristen White of Old Dominion University. Kristen White is an instructional technologist with the Center for Learning and Teaching at Old Dominion University. She's the university's lead Zoom trainer. Kristen has been an integral part of ODU's transition to remote teaching during COVID-19 and continues to develop and facilitate faculty support on topics including Zoom, Blackboard, VoiceThread, Kaltura, and other instructional technologies via workshops, consultations, videos, and support documentation. While building online interactive activities for faculty, she has noticed the absence of basic accessibility knowledge and does her best to inform and educate others on how to make content accessible to all learners. Crystal Trapani is an instructional technologist with the Center for Learning and Teaching and an adjunct instructor in the Department of English at Old Dominion University. Crystal has crafted tech-forward activities for her composition courses over 12 years. She blends her experience working with first-generation and non-traditional students, curriculum development, creating interactive and accessible online course content, and training and mentoring faculty in order to help them achieve positive student outcomes and success. In working with faculty, she helps her colleagues gain strong working knowledge of how to make course content successful for students of all learning abilities. Crystal continues her commitment to teaching so that she can share her personal experience in the classroom with faculty. We're excited to have everyone here today. Again, this is being recorded and we will send out this recording. And I will go ahead and hand it over to you both.
Thank you, Danny.
Thank you. All right, so this morning we're going to talk to you all about designing Microsoft PowerPoint and Google Slides. And so I know this is going to be a refresh for those of you who have visited with us over the last couple days, but for those of you who are new, when you start thinking about accessibility, it's not about disability at all. Accessibility is about ability and making things easier for everyone. Odds are you're relying on things that are accessible in your daily life. You go to the grocery store, you go through those automatic doors. When you go to leave, you take your cart to the curb cut to go to your car. If you're watching a movie, you might watch it with the subtitles on, not to disturb somebody in the next room. Or if you've ever used text to speech, you've used an accessibility tool. And so accessibility does impact everyone. Visibility includes those who have no vision or low vision, and they might be using screen readers or high contrast settings or magnifiers, and document structure is going to help these individuals. Audibility includes those who have low hearing or no hearing. Narration or video is often difficult for those individuals. And you want to make sure you're adding captions and subtitles to documents. Mobility, there's the physical mobility, which would be loss of range of motion, but there's also electronic mobility, which is talking about the access and the ability to review documents across multiple devices and have them appear the same no matter where someone's looking at it. And finally, cognition, which is the mental action or process required of acquiring knowledge and understanding through thought, experience, and the senses. And so it's important that you recognize that accessibility really does help everyone. And we've got this table, it provides examples of situational, temporary circumstances where students will benefit from that accessible content. As a lot of our students are working at home, they might have children that are doing schoolwork themselves on Zoom and themselves, so that's going to be a noisy environment. But when we kind of return to that more sense of normalcy, you should certainly have students working in a coffee house. And so those are all things to kind of think about. And so any institution that receives federal funding is required via 508 to maintain and provide accessible documents. It requires all institutions to provide accessible content to students of all learning abilities, and it aims to make websites, web apps, electronic documents, and software accessible to everybody. Any content you deliver to your students in a digital method, be it email, Blackboard, Canvas, another LMS, Google Drive, must meet 508 standards. But accessibility really doesn't have to be a mystery. And I know a lot of people struggle with how to make their documents accessible. And so we're going to show you some ways to make your documents work. And so the first thing we're going to talk about, kind of tailoring into PowerPoint and Google Slides, is master slides and placeholders. When you're building a slide deck, you should start with your master slides. This sort of runs in the background of your program, and it's already populated with all the formatting you're going to use in that slide deck. And this helps you make sure that your slides are consistent in style. Additionally, when you're crafting the master slides, you'll put in placeholders for text, objects, titles, any slide elements. And this is going to help signify to a screen reader what part of the slide is being read. If you simply format your text to look like a title versus putting in the title placeholder, a screen reader doesn't know that that text is meant to be the slide's title. And you should be using those layouts that are built into the slide master versus making a layout on a blank slide. There are a few more placeholder abilities in PowerPoint than in Google Slides, and so that's something you want to be cognizant of, as you won't be able to adjust the reading order in Google Slides without an add-on such as Grackle. And because slides are visual, there's often this high temptation to over-embellish the appearance of the slide. While your slides don't have to be sterile, such as white background or black font, in fact, I think all of us can agree that's pretty boring, there are some things you need to consider. So you want to think about the size of your font. The minimal size for slides should be size 24. Your fonts, you want to think about serifs and sans serifs. Serifs are those little decorative tails and strokes that stem from the letters. If something's a sans serif, it doesn't have those tails. And sans serifs are slightly more readable than serif fonts. You want to make sure there is a clear distinction between the letters when you select your fonts, such as like the font Arial is considered accessible, but it's sometimes hard to tell the difference between something like a lowercase L and an uppercase I. There is not a best typeface or font. Some believe that sans serifs are better for reading, screen reading, while others believe serifs are better for print reading. Either way, you just want to aim for simplicity in your font for the most readability. And so you want to avoid all caps unless you are having an acronym, because when all caps are used, the screen reader is actually going to read out each individual letter versus the word. And that's going to make that inaccessible. Any kind of abbreviations, you want to make sure you're actually spelling out, because it may not make sense for an individual using a screen reader. For example, the word September is abbreviated SEPT, and that would be read as sept by a screen reader, and that wouldn't make sense. Any acronyms, you want to make sure you're providing that full spelling of the acronym prior to the acronym itself. For example, if you were going to abbreviate FBI, you'd want to say Federal Bureau of Investigation and then FBI in parentheses after it. Special characters. There are several special characters that a screen reader cannot read, and it varies screen reader to screen reader what can and cannot be read. And so you want to make sure you're never using a special character in place of a bullet. Always use that built-in formatting. The only underlines in your slides should be for URLs. For users with color blindness or low vision, they may have trouble distinguishing links from regular text without that underline. So the underline should only be for URLs. Font color. Color should never be the only indicator of something that's important. Someone who has color blindness or low vision, they're not going to be able to ascertain that information. And using those built-in formatting tools is important, because if you're including a table or a list, that's going to indicate to the screen reader and announce that it's bringing in a table or a list. Slide titles provide the user with clear navigation throughout the document. When you're creating slide titles, it's absolutely imperative that your titles are succinct, clear, and to the point. You never should replicate slide titles. So example, you can't have two slides named slide titles like this one is. If you need to use the same title, maybe your continuing example, you should number the slide title. So you could say slide title 1 of 3, slide title 2 of 3, and so on and so forth, to make it clear which slide is which. The reason for avoiding those duplicate slide titles is someone who's using a screen reader to review a slide deck, they can't differentiate which slide is which if all the slides have identical titles. The 7x7 rule prevents you from putting too much information on a slide, and this helps students of all learning abilities. A slide should be brief, plain, and concise. It should never be a paragraph. And the idea is that the viewer will be able to quickly glance at your slide and gain all of the information. Each slide should have no more than 7 lines, and each line should have no more than 7 words per line. You should not be looking to read your entire slide for your presentation. The slide is meant to reinforce your presentation and not be a verbatim copy of your lecture. Creating your presentation slides with too much text is overwhelming. Writing what you're going to say word for word will not have the intended effect of comprehension. Instead, the audience's auditory and visual processing channels will be competing to try to read what's on your slide instead of listening to what you're saying, and that's obviously not what you want. And then the alternative or alt text provides a text equivalent of an image, so people who are unable to see the image have access to the message or its intended meaning. Alternative text is required for any image that is decorative, or alternative text is required for any image that is not decorative, and it's required for context or understanding the material. It should be added for tables, and it should not include phrases such as image of or picture of, as a screen reader is going to identify that it is an image or it is a table. That's just being repetitive at that point. If there is any image or text on an image, you have to also include that in the alt text. If an image has a caption, the alternative text should not be the same as the caption. If you're working in PowerPoint, you do have the ability to mark an image as decorative. In slides, you have to actually write in the word decorative for your alt text. Animations. Slide animations can be distracting at best, inaccessible at worst, and potentially cause seizures in a catastrophic scenario. Slide transition animations often distract individuals who are even typically abled. For students with various learning differences, the animations might actually cause them to lose focus or have difficulty navigating your slide deck. Additionally, the user should always be in control of advancing slides. Slides should never automatically progress. And once you've put together your slide deck, it's important to check the slide reading order. The reading order determines what order the elements within the slide will be read by the screen reader. It is important to note, and Kristen's going to talk about this too in a minute, PowerPoint's reading order is bottom to top, where Google Slides is top to bottom. And then once you've completed your document, you do want to run an accessibility checker to check behind you. Even the most well-intentioned individuals miss something when creating a document. Like, I'm really good at always missing alt text on something. Microsoft has a built-in accessibility checker, however, Google Docs does not. In order to check the accessibility in a Google Doc or a Google Slide, you either need to download an accessibility checker or download your slide or your Google Slides as a PowerPoint and run the accessibility checker in Microsoft. And just be careful, because sometimes when you download documents from Google to a Microsoft product, not everything transitions cleanly when it comes to accessibility. So it is very important for you to check behind that program. And so at this point, and I'm gonna put the link in the chat, we're gonna invite you all to kind of work through an example with us. If I would hit the right button. And if you're having any problems getting to the link, let us know in chat and we'll give you a hand. I've got the person in chat who's having a problem.
Okay, thank you. And Cody, I just answered your question regarding whether or not the screen reader or you should be using decorative for that arrow. When you think about if you're trying to emphasize something, using something like bold will actually be announced, versus if you have an arrow, it's going to be read separately. So any image you have is read separately with a screen reader. So it won't give that same emphasis unless it's if it's like a single line with the bullet that or the image is read directly before it. So Mary, are you seeing these three cubes like this?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so when you get here, you can open the slides, but you do need to right click and download the PowerPoint.
Okay, cool.
Open it Yeah, if you open it just in Google, you won't have the same ability to edit as we're doing some of these items.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
No problem. Amy, these presentations are all going to be available through Hawks, and you will be provided those links. So by all means, have at it. And you can always make copies of any of the things that, because we'll be putting the slide deck that we use today also in this folder for you after the presentation. So you can always make copies and tweak things for your needs as well. And if you are ready, that's great. If you are not ready, if you can either put something in chat or use the participants window to let us know that you were still unable to open those two items, that would be great for us. Okay.
Kristen, if you want to jump back to the slide deck real quick and we show them how to do the side by side.
Sure can. Here we go.
And while everybody's kind of getting ready, stuck on our screen. If you also want to try that link, it's the same link, just much longer. While everybody's kind of getting settled, if you'd like to work side by side, and I'll get that question that's in chat in just a second. If you're on a Windows machine, if you hit that Windows button and the arrows on your keyboard, that will let you kind of do a split screen. Mac users, it's a little different. You actually got to hit, it might be gray or it might be green on the top left of your window, and that will let you tile view. And if you're looking for how to download, if you right click on the PowerPoint, just like Kristen's showing, and you go down to download, you can download it from there. You want the PowerPoint open.
Yes, and we're gonna focus on the PowerPoint first. So I'll actually download it and just show you how it should open. Okay. So I think everyone's ready. If you're not, don't worry, it's getting recorded. So if you're catching up, getting it open, we're gonna start. Can you get Dana for me, Crystal? Thank you. Okay, so the slide deck is going to be the same that we've used in PowerPoint and the Google Slides. We do have a video for you if you're more interested in some of the nuances of Google Slides, but because there's a little bit more accessibility features within PowerPoint, we're going to start there because they are very similar in some cases. On the second slide of your slide deck, you should also have links. There is a checklist that we have created, and it goes through a lot of all of the documents, not just what we're focusing on today. And then we've also created a short slide deck if you are trying to take something you've already created and make it accessible after the fact, rather than thinking about, and if you're not recreating or starting to create something, this is going to give you kind of a guide of like how to think about what should you prioritize when you're going back in. And then the last thing is, if you are going to be using Google and you are looking for the accessibility suite, the Grackle suite, this is a link to Google Slides about how to actually use Grackle for Google Slides. The next one is specific to PowerPoint. On Google Slides, it will be more specific to the Google Slides content. This cheat sheet is a great cheat sheet for you while you are, if you're trying to remember some of these things. It kind of gives you a quick overview of how to do those step-by-steps, as well as there are some other links on here about some of the other topics we've covered in past presentations, about how to create some of those other pieces of the accessible material. So now we are going to first take a look, and I'm going to kind of demo through some of this for the first one, and then the second one we'll work through more together, and you can do it with us if you are inclined to. I definitely learn better by doing, so that's why we want to give you the opportunity to kind of go through it with us. So the first thing that we want to focus on today is the Slide Master. And many people, might know that it exists, but might not know all of the pieces and things that they can do within the Slide Master. In order to get to a Slide Master in PowerPoint, on the top ribbon, if you select View, you will see on the left side a Master Views. And we want to select Slide Master. So if you want to do this with me so you can figure out where this actually is, this is how you're going to get to your Slide Master. So View, and then under Master Views, Slide Master. And what this will do is it's going to show me all of the layouts already built into this current slide deck. It's going to right now show me the one that I was selected on. However, if I edit this slide layout, will only affect this slide layout. versus if I scroll to the top on the left-hand panel, this is actually the master for all of our slides. Meaning if I want to change the text, so it's a different text for all of my slide titles, if I want it to be a different font for the actual slide text in the placeholders, this is where I'm going to change all of those things for that consistency factor as well. So something to note here is if you want to make an individual layout slide, you go to that individual layout. But if we want something on all of those slides, such as we want to change the theme, you can choose themes, but remember, you still need to verify that the color contrast is going to meet. Just because they're built in doesn't mean they all meet. So you have to still think about that color contrast. Additionally, you can change just the color schemes from here. You can also customize the color. You can also change the font. So right now, there are built-in ones, but if I don't really like what this is, I can select customize fonts and change it here. Or I can also have the ability to go to the home key or home tab and switch it from here. So if I'm on Slide Master, again, for the fonts, you can use a built-in one, or if you're looking for specific ones, you can select customize font. And then there's also background styles. We're not going to focus a lot on the background styles. That's going to go usually into your color again. We definitely don't suggest using gradients. That's one thing we didn't really touch on the other time, but gradients is going to change your contrast from, the top to the bottom, whichever way you have the gradient go. If you add a gradient, the color contrast will change with what's on top of it from, wherever that gradient is going. So the gradients aren't necessarily suggested. Let's say though, and I don't know if you've noticed, but on our slide decks, most of the time we do have a running title or slide deck title. So if we want that to happen on all of these, all we would do is we would insert a text box. So I can go to insert, and I'm going to go to text box from the text area. And I'm going to put it where I approximately want it. So if I wanted to add it to the bottom left, I'm going to move it up just slightly. And I'm just going to put slide deck title. Now you'll notice on all of the layouts underneath that, it has actually added that in the same area, in the same size. And that way, it will automatically be on there for all of your slides. It's up to you, but this is something that you can edit to, later. You can also add page titles as well, but we're going to talk about some of the things of how you don't necessarily need, we have an outline view we're going to touch on in a little bit regarding some of this stuff as well. So we have that running slide deck, but now we are going to talk about what we were talking about earlier about the slide placeholders. So in the slide placeholders, so if I am, let's say I know I have this very basic title one, right? Notice that all of the layouts have a title. And that is because, like we said, every slide should have a title and every slide title should be unique. So if you have something that's going on and on, make sure that you use like a number, like 1 of 2, 2 of 2 at the end of it so that someone can distinguish between the slides. But let's say I have this slide and I know that in some case I want to actually add some different types of content. So I don't like the way the other layouts are set up. If I go back to the slide master, there is actually the ability to insert a placeholder. And in PowerPoint, you have many more options than you do from Google. You can add content. So it could be any type of content. This could just be a basic one. It could hold any type. It could hold a picture, table, media, or text. And that's probably the easiest one to use. So you can reuse the layout over and over. But if you know there's going to be a specific way you want slides set up, you can always add specifically a text one, a picture one, a chart one, a table one. Or if you have specific needs for online images, things like that, you can put placeholders in here. So if I selected content, I can then drag and place, and you'll notice that it allows me to move this around. The suggestion would be to also keep that you have the alignment set up on here and not have to move a lot of things around, because when your students are going through a slide deck or you're going through a presentation, if you move around where your titles or your actual placeholders are sitting a lot, it's going to jump on the screen. So it's easier to follow if at least your titles are in the same spot. We know that sometimes your content might move around a little bit, but the easiest placeholder, like I said, is to use just that content one. And now that adds it to my layouts. So from here, I am going to go back out and I can simply select close master view, and it's going to bring me back to the main deck, and it brought me back to the same slide we were on. And now we're going to take a look at a very bad example of what your slide hopefully will never be. Although we have seen some like this in the past. So at this time in the chat, can you come up with some of the things you noticed with a quick look? Yes, Dr. Groom, 7x7 is definitely not used here at all. Doesn't matter if I'm giving them this, you know, oh, we've got a lot. We've got underlining, we've got the image over, or, you know, under the text. We've got difficult to read, tiny font size, clutter, images distracting, variation of fonts. Yes.
Color contrast.
Color contrast, definitely. So it's definitely too busy. So the first thing we are going to do is I am first also going to show you what this looks like in the outline.
I love it. She says, and you know the presenter is going to read their slides. Yes.
That's the whole point. You don't want to read everything. Like your students literally will read, generally, most of your students will read faster than you are actually speaking. And then, like we said, that you have that dual channel and they are competing. They can't listen to you and gain the same things. So even if you're adding a little bit, they're reading all of this. You want a couple seconds so they can quickly get a grasp of what you are going to talk about and then listen to you when you are presenting or you are providing additional detail. So I'm going to change right now. If I go to the view area of the ribbon, I'm going to switch to outline view. Normal is going to give you those snapshots of each individual slide, but I'm going to show you what the outline view, we've looked at the Word or Microsoft Word, as well as Google Doc area last time. And I'm going to move this over just a little bit so we can see the slide a little bit easier. So you'll notice that when we have it set up correctly for these other slides, we have the slide titles and they can quickly jump to those slides. And then they have the bullet points. Versus on this one, they literally have the wall of text now put into the outline and it's not very pretty there either. So this is going to help both your sighted users as well as those that are trying to navigate. And if there's a lot to go through, it's going to, you know, be a little bit more difficult to navigate. So now we are going to edit this. I'm going to edit it as the demo, and then we'll do one together after this. So the first thing we're going to look at is, I am going to say that I'm going to select this whole text box. And because there is so much going on, I'm actually going to check the color contrast to show you if you weren't in that other one, because this is really important. I am going to select the text. I'm going to go to the home tab of the ribbon, and then I'm going to go to the drop down for the font color. And I'm going to go to more colors and under the custom tab. And I know some of you said you didn't have the custom tab. In this case, you might have to do some, you know, testing of like getting close to this color. But my guess is that you're at least going to have the RB or RGB, and we have the links for converting that to a hex code if you need it. I'm going to take that color and I'm going to go back to the website that we had. So bear with me for a second. I have the WebAIM color contrast checker up already. My background is white. So I'm just going to change this foreground color, which is the text color, and enter. And I can see that it is failing. I can again use that slider to try to find something to make it past at least the AA, because well, I don't know what size we're at, but we should end up being at least 24 after this. So if it's at least passing the AA for a 24 font, you will be fine. If you're looking for the reminder about the AA versus AAA, if you scroll down on the WebAIM contrast checker page, it does remind you of what those requirements are, and it will tell you what the sizes are for the normal versus large text. So if I could do it this way, but we know that it's not a good color. So I'm just going to quickly go back to the PowerPoint, and I am going to change this whole text box into one font. So I'm just going to select Verdana, because I know that that is, oops, as I'm typing on here though, unfortunately, let me select that again. And let me go to Verdana up here. And now I am going to change all of the text to black. So it's right here. And now everything is at least black. So I have like, in that case, there was so much wrong. It would be easier to just change everything to kind of wipe off the slate and fix more things as we go. So we could, if we wanted to, leave accessibility as, you know, bold, but we also want to take away the underline. You can either go up to the top under the font on the home tab and click that, or you can use Control U to turn it on or off. The disabilities is not only an underline. I don't know if you noticed this, there is a link here as well. So I'm going to actually take away the underline. However, it's going to stay there because it is a hyperlinked material, but we're going to change the color of the hyperlinks to, and I'm going to remember this number, Crystal. I don't think I am. Do you remember it?
It is, hold on. You can tell we do this a lot together. 2200cc.
So in general, it generally goes to this blue, which is accessible. Because we have changed the font color and it is already a link, it doesn't automatically change it to that color. So you're gonna have to go back if you do this the wrong way first and make some of these changes more manually so that you're aware. Additionally, I have another one right here that I'm going to take the underline away from. And then now the nice thing is when I go up here, it's a recent color, yay. And the same thing for the screen readers. So I'm going to remove the underline. I'm going to change that color to the screen readers. We also, and I'm going to do the same for this accessibility and change it to the blue, except, I'm sorry, the assistive technologies. Same thing for usability. And I'm also going to take away the underline. So you can do it multiple ways. Here for the used by specified users to achieve goal, I'm going to take off the underline. We might want to leave it as bold. And then this for universal design, this is actually a link. So I'm going to select it. And I'm going to, if I can get this right today, I'm going to take off the underline, but I'm going to make it blue so that it is all linked. Okay. So one thing to note is I am now going to take all of this stuff and I'm going to move it so that we can actually put this more into an accessible, or what would be more accessible. So if I take, and I'm going to select all of this by Control A, and I actually have some extra spacing, so I'm going to delete that. Let's make sure I have the built-in spacing, which is what we want for the rest of the paragraphs. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste it in my notes. So I did a Control C for copy, Control V for the paste. However, I will tell you something that we have found out is that these links that we have up here, although they're accessible up here because they're using descriptive text links and not using the URL, in the notes section of a PowerPoint, it does not allow you to actually make those accessible links. You cannot put in descriptive text. So if you are going to put the links into your notes and make this more like a 7x7, you would actually have to give the full URL, which is technically not fully accessible. The suggestion, if possible, would be to use that descriptive text and include it in your slides so that they were actual actionable links and not something that the student would have to copy and paste later. So we have this down here, and I am actually going to put it really quickly into a bulleted format because right now it is hard to read because it's in paragraphs. But this is kind of like what my script might be, more so about what I'm going to talk about. But we are going to take out all of this because we have it below it now. So some of the things we might want to do is we probably would, instead of bad example, and I can actually change this here, I can change this. We're actually talking all about accessibility. So my title might be accessibility. And then from there, we could make sure that it is bulleted format. And we might want to say, and I'm trying to think, and I'm going to go to my good example because my brain is not working. This would be what kind of we would change it to. It includes the products, devices, services, and environments. But we have all of the things that we would have been talking about below it. Again, the links from the notes area will not be accessible. So make sure that you are actually, if you can, when possible, to include them in your actual slide. So this is a quick, you know, these are the things we're going to talk about, but I'm going to elaborate on those so that the students are actually going to be listening to what I'm saying and not just reading the slide if I'm in presentation mode or in a video itself. You'll notice that unfortunately, when we downloaded this from Google, that this did not take the layout over. So that text placeholder did not come over correctly. So you'll notice in the good example even that it is not showing like the bulleted lists from the previous slides, like number 2 and 3. And that is why we're going to talk about, you always want to use that accessibility checker after the fact, especially if you are transitioning from one type of content software to another. So the other thing to note about this in the bad example was that this image, first of all, the contrast, it was on top of text. You couldn't read the text, but it is also missing, I'm going to select it and right click it. It is also missing alt text. So is this going to really add anything to the conversation? Maybe if it's not in the actual PowerPoint itself, there is this ability just to mark it as decorative. And that way a screen reader will skip over it because it's not something adding to the content. If it is something adding to the content, you would add, you know, 1 to 2 sentences to give context to the image. And if you were not at the color and alt text one, like what Danny said, he's going to be providing links and we do have information about the color and alt text. I'm just going to mark this decorative for right now. But in this good example, it wasn't marked, and this is to show you sometimes things don't copy over correctly. And additionally, I believe in the slide deck that we had it in Google, we wrote the word decorative and it did not come over and it didn't mark it decorative. So some things to think about if you are downloading from Google to PowerPoint itself. Okay, so now let's look at an even worse example. Are you ready? So this is another example. Actually skip over slide 7 and we are going to focus on editing slide 8. So now this is the time that we want you to try editing with us so that you can get accustomed to where some of those areas are within PowerPoint itself. So again, we've got a lot of things going on here. What we probably want to do before we copy any of this to get our 7x7, because again, we have our wall of text, right? What else do you see in here that we are going to definitely need to change? You can throw it in chat again. The background color, yeah, it's making me have a little bit of heart palpitations. I'm having a hard time reading it and I have my glasses on. Okay, the images, yep, conflicting with the text, the contrast. Yep, the red text, the white with the white on white. Yes, we have a lot of things, the highlighting. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually select this image and I'm going to move the image really quick. And I'm going to try to move it out of the way. It might be fighting me in a moment. The other thing I'm going to do is I am going to select all of this and I'm going to do kind of the same thing I did before. I'm going to change it all to black really quick and I am going to actually resize this. Oops, let me undo that really quick and use my shift so it doesn't resize it incorrectly. I'm going to move it out of the way for a second. Notice we can't really see any of the font now that it's on the white background. So in order to make this really simple for all of us, let's change that to black so we can see all of the font first at least. So now that we have all of the font, let's go on to actually copying and, well, before we do that, we talked about the highlight. So this red and black, we could test, I could tell you, if we use the red or the background of the red, and I'm not going to be able to get the actual, let me get off of it because it's fighting me. I can't actually get to the hex code for it. So I'm going to use the eyedropper really quick so I can identify it. And I'm going to go to more colors and go to the RGB. I couldn't remember it off the top of my head. And I can go to the WebAIM. I'm going to show you, you don't need to do this with me, but if I was going to have the red background and I had the black for the text, it does technically pass. It might not be the best passing though. And really we're going to probably change this if we're leaving that background back to white. And if we do white instead of black, it's not going to pass. So let's think about the fact that it's going to eventually be back to the white text. So we might add some different color to it instead. So instead of it being highlighted with red, I'm actually going to highlight that. And if you use the highlighting tool at the top, or you can right click and get to the highlight, either way, you can put no color and it will take off the color. And if you wanted to really add highlight again, you can add a color, but red really was not enough to me. You want to really highlight something, use an emphasis of bold or something like that to help draw out, or the color that's going to give a little bit more contrast if possible. So now that we have, and I'm going to take, I didn't change all of my font to Verdana yet, so let's change it all to one font to make it easier. And then I'm going to also take away the underlines by selecting the U at the top or using Control U to take off the actual underline. Now let's take everything in here and copy it. You can either right click and copy, or you can select Control C to copy it. And down at the bottom, you can right click and paste, or you can use Control V. We're going to put that in the notes area because we want to identify what we're going to change this to. And something I didn't note in here that we did use, and we brought this up in the Word, you'll notice that we actually added a space using Enter. This is actually going to be read by a screen reader. So instead of doing this, I'm just going to quickly show you if you were not at the other one. I'm going to delete those spaces, and I am going to go to line spacing, and I might add, and it's going to fight me today. We were having an issue with this earlier. It's not allowing me to add the space after. So if you're using bullet, it should allow you to, and we'll show you that when we get to the bullet. So right now, this is,
I'm going to interrupt you, Kristen. This is a good example of how when you download from Google Slides to PowerPoint, there are sometimes problems because we made this in Google Slides.
yes. Can you
I got it.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to, we have this down here. Let's think about how we can make this into more of a 7x7 piece of content. So what, if you look at this text, what are we what is the focus of the information that's on here? What could we maybe label this slide? Any ideas? I'll give you a second to read. I'm not reading it out loud. I'm not gonna. Okay, can't see a focus, okay? That's okay. So I'll give a suggestion. My suggestion for this would be that we would be like video student engagement or student engagement. So I'm going to actually change the title so it is truly the title. So we can put video student engagement. That's interesting about the highlighter. And then some things that we probably want to focus on are going to be, and this is actually, this is linked. So I'm going to take this link. I'm going to copy the link so that we have it because it is no longer down here. I'm just going to put it down here so we don't lose it, because that links directly to the study itself. So we want to, let's say, change this. I'm going to delete all of the text from here because we have it below. And now I am going to put in a bulleted list. So in order to add the bullets, if they aren't already here, I can go to the top paragraph area in the home ribbon, home tab ribbon, and select the bullet. I can also make this bigger because remember we said we really shouldn't be smaller than 24 font. So when we are in 24 font, the first thing we might want to be doing is to tell them what study we are focusing on. So the study focus is the Guo, I might be pronouncing that incorrectly, I apologize, Guo et al. And it was from 2014. And we can add that link back in now. So if I highlight it here, I can either right click and put a link, or I can go to the Insert tab and select a link. And I actually have it saved because I copied it and put it down at the bottom. And I can select to link to that 2014 study. And something else that we might want to focus on here would be that a big idea in this study was that it's a large study. There were 6.9 million views that they studied. So we're just taking that information and we're chunking it out into kind of like the main ideas of what we would be talking about when we are presenting. Another thing we really want them to gain from what they're getting from us talking would be that the median engagement, I can type today hopefully, is going to be at most 6 minutes. And longer videos, such as 9 minutes, receive half the views. And shorter videos, 3 minutes, get most views. So these are the main ideas from those paragraphs that we had. And if we really wanted to, we can change this to white text if we wanted to, because I'm going to move back that image. And then they'll be able to see it. You don't have to add the image. And I am going to change that because I just did it without resizing with the shift. So I apologize, so that it is going to be the right size for them. And if we notice that it is not going to be showing, I also notice that my bullets are not showing in the correct color. So my bullets are not showing in the correct color. If I go to the bulleted area, I can change the color of them. So I can also change those to white. And I can also change what they look like if I prefer to. And I can also change the percentage of the text it shows. So if I select OK, it only did it to that one because I only had that one selected. If I do it for all of them and I go to bullets and numbering, I can do it for all of them. I could do white and I could do 100%. And it updated all of them. As you can see, this image is still not working for some of our text. So we can either make it, we can crop the picture if we wanted to by just moving it like this, and we can make it a different size or different color font, or we could even, let me get off of that so I can, stop. It's fighting me, there we go. Or I might even use a shift. So I'm holding the shift and hitting enter so that it is moving it to the next line so that they can still see the content of what I had. So that it's still there with the image behind it if you don't want to change the color. The last thing for the image is what should we check if it has? And I do agree, white text is hard to read. This is just an example of how you might change a slide that was already put on there. Yes, the alt text. And the alt text is missing. If you weren't at it, you could right click it and do edit alt text. Or you can go to, and I know if it's going to let me see it, it should be, I thought I added it to my area, but the right click is going to be the easiest way. Here it is under picture format. I'm like, I added mine. You may not have the alt text here. I actually had to change my ribbon defaults to make it show up there. So if you do not see it, the right click and get here would allow you to get to the alt text. And
Kristen, I'm going to have you show something just so I can catch up on questions.
Yeah.
Can you show them how you copied the link out of the slide? Because I've gotten a lot of questions on that.
Okay, so if I right click the link, I can edit, open, copy, or remove. And I can then if I took it out when I copied it, what happened is when I went to go insert it back in, so whatever text you are using, if you go to insert and link, and it's going to fight me really quick, apparently, it should be the first one because you copied it. If it's not there, then you would have to do insert link at the bottom. And from here, you can edit the text to display. Again, you want that to be descriptive text so they understand where the link is going to bring them. If a screen reader is reading it, it's going to read them a link to http:// it's going to read letter by letter. So you don't want to give them this actual link because that doesn't really tell them anything. You want to make sure that whatever text you display gives them context of where they're going. And that would be where you would add that in and select OK. Does that make sense? For any other questions on that link? And no, this is the same size font. I see the question about, does it make it a different size font? No, it leaves it as 24. It just moved it down. It does look a little bit different because there's no bullet next to it, but it is the same size font. And like we said earlier about the adding the spacing in between for bullets, it should allow you, and it might be slightly different in here than we had. Nope, you can do it for bullets. It doesn't want you to do it for paragraphs. So if you do that arrow next to the paragraph, the up down arrow, you can actually, if you want a little bit of space so it's easier to tell when you have multiple lines what goes to what bullet, you can increase the font in spacing between each of the bullets. Do not decrease it. It will make it less readable. It's a built-in sizing based on the font size you are using. So you should never decrease. You can increase, but decreasing is going to make it more look like a wall of text again. So that is very difficult to change that. So down here we have what we would more so read. And if I drag this up, you can see this is kind of what I would be talking about. As a reminder, I can also make a bulleted list for myself, or it doesn't have to be full sentences, but something if I'm using this as my script is definitely helpful, or to add to the students if they are trying to review this later and you're providing them the PowerPoint, they can actually get to the speaker notes. How do they get to the speaker notes might be another question, which would be under view and notes page. So on the notes page, because I copy and pasted, it's in a different color text. This is a Google thing we found out. If you don't type it in yourself and you're downloading the Google, for some reason, it does some funky stuff with the actual font stuff. So we do suggest that you build it and type it in and not copy and paste it or have it from your Google download. It does cause some issues, some things that we've come across while doing this. We generally use slides, so we didn't come across this prior to this, but this would be something they could print off the handout view. This is the notes view. They can have different ability, so they can still have access to things that you've written after you've maybe presented them the content itself, if they need something to review. I will tell you, my faculty that I had used to give us this bulleted view, and they would tell us when you print, to print in the, I will show you what they had us print in. They would not have us do full page slides. They would have us do notes pages, but like 3 per slide. And I would take notes about what my faculty member was talking about. And to me, this helped keep me engaged too, because I couldn't just get what I needed from the actual slide deck. I had to listen so I knew what was going on to add context to what was on the slide. So that's something to, if you're not aware that that was an option. So I'm going to go back to the outline view. So now you can see when we, and this is because it wasn't a placeholder, it's not added, but generally speaking, it should be a placeholder holding that there. So it gives you those bullets. Before we show you quickly on the Google side, last thing to talk about is going to be how do you look at reading order and accessibility in general. So if you go to Review tab, you are going to want to check the accessibility whenever you're using PowerPoint. It's going to mark things that are noticeably wrong. It might not catch everything, such as your reading order, especially if you're downloading from Google. Remember, Google puts it in one order and Microsoft is the opposite. So it will tell me if I'm missing alternative text. I can go and you'll notice that these items are actually labeled whatever the shape or whatever was from Google. So that's something to think about. You can add a description right from here and it will pull up the alt text if it wasn't open. The contrast it will also sometimes bring up. So it brought up some of the contrast here. And then the reading order is here. So it's saying on 5, 7, and 8, it thinks the reading order is incorrect. So let me go to 7 just so we can see this, and we are going to use the drop down arrow and verify object order. So these are the elements of your slide. So it reads from the bottom up. So always start at the bottom of your reading order list. When you select the item, it's going to select the item on your slide so you can see what's being read. So really, that's not the first thing that should be read. What's the next one? Oh, that's the first one that should be read. So if I select this, I can either use the arrow and push it. Oh, it's not going to let me apparently. Yes, it did. Yay. Okay, so you can use the arrows or you can drag and drop either way. So that should be read first. The title should be read, then the content. And then if it was, anything added to the slide, if it was decorative, it would skip over it. If it wasn't decorative, it would give them the alt text. If you are looking just for the reading order, I'm going to close these out really quick. If you're looking just for the reading order, select something on a slide, and then you go to the Home tab and go to Arrange and Selection pane. And this gives you that reading order right here. And now it's showing it in a different order though. You notice that? Very interesting. So the selection pane is showing it the opposite order as we just set the reading order. So some issues with the reading order possibly. And I will say the reading order is very important, especially if you add text boxes and don't use placeholders. They're generally either put at the very end or they totally don't read them. So it's really important that you're checking the reading order so that everything is read. And I'm going to jump to the slides handout, which is the exact same, to kind of show you where you get to some of these things within Google Slides. So if you go to View and Master, one nice thing that's in Google Slides that PowerPoint doesn't have is that whatever, so I'm on this second layout, it's going to show me any slides using that layout. Same idea, if you want to, on all of the slides of that, you're going to select that top master and edit anything from here. And if you are wanting to edit an individual layout, you are going to do it from here. I did not show you if you want to, let me go to, I'm sorry, I just thought about this. I want to make sure you can see it in normal view. If I am on a slide and I want to change the layout, all the layouts that you have built in that you have created are going to be here. So you can change the layout from here. You can also, in your master, you can change the titles of these, but this is where you want to select them from. You don't want to just create a blank slide. So if you do a new slide and you do blank and add things, you're going to have more problems. Make sure you're actually using one of the built-in layouts here. Similarly to here in Google Slides. If I want out of the master slides, the easiest way is just to select a slide and it will pull me out. So I selected a slide from the panel on the left. And if I want to insert a new slide, and I'm sorry, I go from slide on here, it's a little bit different. If I do new slide, I then will get a blank slide to start, but then I have to give it a layout. So I'm going to apply a specific layout to it from here. So it's a little bit different in Google. And one last thing to think about for Google that PowerPoint doesn't have is in the master slides. Again, if I go to View and Master, I can actually change the color, the theme and stuff from here, but I have the ability to change the link color, which is different than PowerPoint. PowerPoint, you cannot do that from, is a master slide. And I know that was a lot, and we do have in this Microsoft folder, the Microsoft and PowerPoint and Google Slides, we have created the same example through Google Slides if you're interested in doing Google Slides. We kind of showed the PowerPoint because it has a little bit more of the accessibility features already built in. Grackle is what you would use for the slides if I need to test this. This is an add-on. We've given the links to it. I would launch it, and it's going to run the accessibility checker. That's an external add-on tool. And I could go through here. It's telling me one of my slides is missing a title because slide 2 is a blank slide. If I go there, that tells me I can add the title here, or I can apply another layout to it, but it's going to give you everything versus PowerPoint only showed you what was wrong. This shows you what is past and what is wrong. Oh, reading order for here, I'll just show you where that is, but we won't go through exactly. For each slide, it's going to give you the reading order, and it goes from top to bottom on here. So at this point, WebAIM Color Contrast Checker is a free program. You can always, you can use that for a lot of things, just finding information as well as using that for the color contrast checker.
Homework.
Homework. Oh yes, homework. If you are coming for Friday, not really homework. I mean, what we're suggesting is all of you, even if you are not using and I'm going to get to the right place, if you are not using Google Slides, just take a look at this video. We're actually going to be focusing on that study a little bit, not just that study, other studies about video as well. And look at what can you identify from our video. We purposely kind of made some things that we wouldn't necessarily do. What could we do to make it better and more accessible and engaging? Based on, and you can look at that that study. It is linked from the slides today. If you don't have a chance, don't worry. We're going to go over it anyways, but it might help you to see a not great example. And it's not horrible. It's just not great.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
You were breaking up a little bit.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Is it okay if I share the links to the recordings with my colleagues? Because these have been extremely helpful and I would like to pass it along.
Yes, you can pass anything along to your colleagues. Danny's going to be sending out a link to the actual blog that has all of the links to all of the different accessibility series. So it will have the links to all of the folders with the handouts and also all of the links to the videos of the presentations themselves.
It's in the chat.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, well, I know we are just a few minutes past, but as always, appreciate you working to answer all the audience questions. Crystal and Kristen, thank you so much for today. Audience, thank you for attending, and we hope to see you on Friday as well for the final part of this series. Again, we recorded this, we'll send it out. Please feel free to share it. If you have questions for us, you can email us at marketing@hawkslearning.com. And I hope everyone has a great rest of their day. Thanks so much.